I've never told this story in full. I'd brush it off with vague phrases like, it was just a creepy encounter, or we were lucky, that's all. But today, 2 years later, I'm ready to lay it out exactly as it happened. No sugarcoating, because I still wake up in a cold sweat whenever I hear branches scraping against a window. The trip was supposed to be a breath of fresh air. Literally. It was October, and my parents' divorce had left both my sister and me emotionally gutted. I was 19, trying to act like an adult, and Sophie was 12, glued to her phone, pretending she didn't care while sobbing into her pillow at night. I figured we needed to get out of the house. I bought an MSR Elixir 2 tent, 2 North Face sleeping bags, and stuffed our backpacks with granola bars and spare socks. Nothing hardcore, just a quiet lake in Pisgah National Forest that a college friend had mentioned. Off the official trails, a little unofficial clearing, perfect for a campfire, marshmallows, and late-night stargazing. We headed out of Asheville on a Friday afternoon in my beat-up Toyota RAV4. Sophie was chattering nonstop, thrilled about our survival adventure. We reached the turnoff around 5. The road narrowed to gravel, the trees closed in, and my GPS died right after a landmark I'd memorized. A lightning-split pine. Left turn. The clearing was exactly as described, a flat patch of faded grass about 50 meters from the lake's edge. The water lay black and still, steam rising off it in thin ribbons. The woods around us were a mix of oak, pine, and thick rhododendron bushes, and the silence was dense, not peaceful, heavy. I remember thinking, where are the birds? But I blamed October. We set up camp quickly. I staked the tent so the mesh window faced the lake. I thought it would be a nice view if I woke up during the night. Sophie gathered dry wood, I got a fire going, and within an hour we were wrapped in fleece blankets, roasting marshmallows on twigs. The air smelled of smoke and damp leaves. I felt solid, like the big sister who could fix anything. "What if a bear comes?" Sophie asked, licking sticky fingers. "No bears here," I lied, "and all our trash is in the car. Don't worry, I've got you." She smiled and something warm spread in my chest. Looking back, I realized that smug "I've got you" was exactly what made me ignore the first warning signs. Around 10, the fire died down. We crawled into the tent, and I zipped the inner door, a flimsy barrier that gave more psychological comfort than actual protection. Sophie fell asleep almost instantly, curled into a ball. I lay there listening. The silence outside was absolute. No crickets, no wind, just the distant lap of water if I strained my ears. Unsettling, but eventually drowsiness pulled me under. I woke the first time to a sharp scratching sound, like a fingernail dragged along nylon, right by my ear. I froze. My heart slammed into my throat. The tent was pitch black. Clouds had swallowed the moon. The sound came again, softer, farther away, near the opposite wall. I turned my head slowly. Sophie was asleep. Beyond the mesh window, just darkness and vague branch silhouettes. I told myself it was a branch swaying in the wind. Yes, wind. I'd laugh about it in the morning. I squeezed my eyes shut and forced my breathing to slow. After a minute, I almost believed it. I fell back asleep. The second time Sophie woke me. Her hand on my shoulder was ice cold, even though the sleeping bag was warm. "Chloe, wake up." Her voice was thin and trembling. I glanced at the little clock on my flashlight's carabiner. 3:17 a.m. "What? What's wrong?" She pressed herself against me. I could feel her shaking. There was someone, right at the mesh. I sat up fast and grabbed the flashlight. The beam hit the tent wall, lighting up the mosquito netting and the gray rectangle of the window. Nothing. "Where?" "Looking inside." She stumbled over the words. A person. He was on all fours, and he just stared. Through the mesh, a chill rippled down my spine, but I immediately clicked into big sister mode. Sophie, you had a nightmare. There's nobody here. No, I wasn't sleeping. I heard footsteps and woke up, and he was already there. His eyes were shiny, and then he crawled away, back into the dark. She broke into silent sobs, shoulders heaving. I hugged her, stroked her hair, and scrambled for rational explanations. A drunk hiker? Some local homeless guy? But why crawl? Maybe a large dog, and her half-asleep brain saw a person. I lined up the theories and convinced myself, because I desperately wanted to believe them. Okay, I said firmly. I'll go out and check. I've got pepper spray. If anyone was there, they're long gone. Don't go, she squeaked. I have to, or you won't calm down. I pulled on my boots, unzipped the tent, and stepped into the freezing air. The flashlight beam sliced across the clearing. Fire ring, car, everything in place. I circled the tent. Leaves crunched underfoot. At the mesh window Sophie had pointed to, I paused. The grass looked more flattened, but in the darkness I couldn't be sure. I stood for a minute, then walked back. Empty. See? Nothing. Go back to sleep. I'm right here. Sophie seemed to believe me, or pretended to. We lay down again, but I didn't sleep. I listened. The silence had returned, heavy and suffocating. Morning came pale and milky. The fog had lifted, leaving a damp film on everything. We crawled out around 8, and Sophie almost immediately shrieked, "Look!" She was pointing at the ground maybe 2 feet from the mesh window. I walked over and felt my stomach drop. In the wet dirt, mixed with leaves, were clear prints. Palms, wide, fingers splayed, pressed deep, and farther back, the oval marks of knees. The picture was hideous. Someone had been on all fours, face pushed right up to the netting, staring in at us. At Sophie. The flattened trail led toward the bushes in a dragging, crawling pattern. My throat tightened. I automatically scanned the clearing. My eyes landed on the fire ring. Beside it lay a cheap plastic lighter we definitely didn't own. Bright orange, with a gnawed spark wheel. Then I saw the branch. It was off to the side between the tent and the lake path. Thick, about the width of a finger, broken at one end and shredded into splinters. But not cut. I crouched and picked it up. Longitudinal grooves, fibers mixed with something brown. Tooth marks, human tooth marks. Someone had sat there chewing on wood like an animal. My insides went cold. "We're leaving," I said, standing. "Right now." Sophie didn't argue. We started throwing stuff into the trunk. I moved fast, hands trembling. The silence around us was still absolute. Just our footsteps and breathing. At some point I realized Sophie wasn't beside me. I turned. She stood frozen a few meters from the car, staring into a dense wall of rhododendron. "Sophie, get here!" I hissed. She raised a hand and pointed. At first I saw nothing, just a tangle of branches. Then the bushes swayed. A shoulder emerged from the shadows, a human shoulder in a filthy jacket. It moved forward, but not upright. The figure advanced low to the ground, weight on its hands, crawling on all fours. I made out greasy hair, a matted beard, a pale face turned toward us, eyes wide, unblinking. He shifted his hands slowly, joints cracking, and his jaw worked, like he was chewing something, and never breaking eye contact. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Sophie. We bolted to the car. I threw open the driver's door, shoved her into the passenger seat, key in the ignition. The engine coughed and turned over. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The figure had crawled onto the middle of the road and stopped, head lowered on all fours like a dog about to spring. I hit the gas. Gravel sprayed. We flew down that rutted road, bouncing and skidding, until the trees finally thinned and I merged onto the main highway. Only then did I notice I was crying. Silent, heaving sobs, exactly like Sophie the night before. At the Transylvania County Sheriff's Office, we were listened to with stone faces. The deputy took notes, peering at us over his glasses. When I finished, he sighed. Sounds like Gary again. We know him. Local. Lives in a trailer off the grid. Schizophrenia. Sometimes he goes into the woods for days. He's not dangerous. He just likes to watch. Watch? My voice cracked. He was chewing a stick 2 feet from our tent. Crawling. He doesn't attack, ma'am. We'll pick him up. Don't worry. Definitely. And they did. Later, I learned Gary was a man in his mid-40s, on disability, lived alone since his mother died. His treatment was spotty. The woods called him when the voices told him to. What the voices told him that night, I've made a point not to ask. We were told we could go home. We'd abandoned some gear at the lake, but I didn't even consider going back. Sophie was silent the entire drive, just squeezing my wrist occasionally. At home, she slept almost a full day. I sat beside her, made tea, and replayed every minute in my head. What if I hadn't woken up? What if Sophie hadn't screamed? What if he hadn't crawled away? 3 days later, I started sorting through the stuff we'd thrown into the trunk, shaking out sleeping bags, sorting leftover food. When I picked up my old Osprey day pack, the one I used for classes, something wrapped in a crumpled paper towel fell out. I unwrapped it. A branch, that same gnawed branch, with the tooth grooves and brown stains, carefully bundled like a keepsake. I did not pick it up. We never touched it, I swear. My hand started shaking, my breath caught. I called the sheriff's office and asked if Gary was still in custody. Yes, ma'am, since the day before yesterday. Alone in a cell. I still don't know how that branch ended up in my backpack. The investigators suggested I might have picked it up mechanically, in shock, and not remembered. But I remember every second of that morning. I didn't touch it. The backpack had been in the locked car. The car was locked the whole way. Gary was in a holding cell, and the branch, it's right there in my palm, smelling of dirt and someone else's spit. I never told Sophie. I hid the bundle in the back of a drawer and try not to think about it. But sometimes at night, when bare branches scratch the window glass, I wake up and stare into the darkness, half expecting to see a silhouette outside, on all fours. I don't go into the woods anymore. Ever. And I doubt I'll ever sleep with the curtains open again, because some things stay with you forever, especially the things you never picked up. I still have the photo. A handprint smeared in mud, 5 fingers, clear as day, pressed against the green nylon of our tent. I measured it with my own hand that morning. The palm was wider, the fingers longer, and it sat almost 2 meters off the ground. I'm 5'10". To leave a print that high, someone would have to be at least 6'5", maybe taller, and they'd have to stand there in complete silence, slowly dragging their palm down the fly sheet while we slept. That was the first night. We should have left right then. Now looking back, I understand that. But at the time, I did what any rational guy with a camera and a bit of pride would do. I explained it away and doubled down. It was early September, and Julie and I had driven my Subaru Outback up a crumbling Forest Service road in Olympic National Forest, about 7 miles past the last proper campground. I'd found the spot on a hiking forum, a little meadow by a creek, no facilities, no cell signal, Nobody around for miles. Perfect. We'd been dating for 2 years, and Julia, a biology teacher, had a thing for moss and ferns. I'd booked the week off from the software firm, and we'd packed the MSR Hubba Hubba, a jet boil, and enough dehydrated chili to survive an apocalypse. I remember the feeling when we pitched the tent: clean air, the sound of water over stones, the rare kind of quiet that made our city apartment feel like a punishment. The first evening was exactly what we wanted. We built a fire in the old stone ring, boiled water for dinner, and sat on a fallen log watching the stars thicken overhead. Julia leaned against my shoulder and she said, "I could stay here forever." The flames cracked, an owl called somewhere across the creek, and I felt, honestly, that nothing in the world could touch us. That changed at 3:15 in the morning. I know the time because I checked my watch the second I woke up. Something had pulled me out of sleep, a sound so out of place that my brain flagged it as wrong before I was even fully conscious. It was a slow, deliberate shh, like someone dragging an open palm down the outside of the fly sheet. Not a branch, not the wind. The night was dead still. The sound came from the left side of the tent, right next to my head. I lay frozen, feeling my heart kick against my ribs. The dragging stopped. Then it started again, lower this time, as if whoever was out there had crouched and was now rubbing the fabric just above the ground. Julia stirred. "Mark?" she whispered, half asleep. I fumbled for my headlamp and clicked it on. The beam lit up the green nylon, and instantly the sound stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums. I sat up, unzipped the inner mesh, and poked my head into the vestibule. The fly sheet was still, no shape, no shadow. Through the vent, I could see the faint glow of the dying coals. Nothing moved. "Probably a deer," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Maybe licking salt off the fabric." Julia murmured something about me being paranoid and rolled over. I lay back down but didn't sleep for a long time. Every few minutes I'd catch myself holding my breath, listening for that soft, deliberate shh. The next morning I unzipped the fly sheet to air it out, and that's when I saw it. A perfect handprint, mud brown, stamped just below the roofline. I stood there staring, my coffee cooling in my hand. The print was fresh, the dirt still slightly damp. 5 fingers, the thumb on the left, a right hand, with the palm slightly cupped, as if the hand had pressed flat and then dragged downward about 3 inches. And it was high. I'm 5'10" and had to reach up to cover it with my own palm. The print dwarfed my hand. Julia came out, saw my face, and then looked at the tent. "What the hell is that?" she said, her voice going thin. "Probably some idiot hiker messing with us," I said. But even as I said it, my stomach felt hollow. The nearest trailhead was miles away. We hadn't seen another soul since we left the main road. I took my phone and snapped a photo. Julia measured with her eyes. "Mark, that's almost 2 meters up. Who stands that tall and just rubs a tent in the middle of the night?" I didn't have an answer, so I did what I do best. I reached for technology. "We'll set up the GoPro tonight," I said. "If someone's out there, we'll have their face by morning." Julia bit her lip but nodded. I think we both needed to believe we were in control. That afternoon, I hiked back to the car to grab the camera and the mini tripod. I positioned it about 15 feet down the main approach to the clearing, disguised among ferns, aimed directly at the tent. I checked the battery, the memory card, the angle. I even set it to record on motion detection, feeling smug. "Let the bastard try now," I muttered. Julia didn't laugh. We kept the fire low that night. Neither of us talked much. The forest felt different. The gaps between the trees seemed darker. The creek's murmur now sounded like muffled voices. I lay in my sleeping bag with my folding knife open next to my pillow, which was ridiculous, but it helped. No sound came that night. I woke once at 2:40 a.m. to absolute stillness, then fell back asleep almost against my will. In the morning, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe the camera had caught something. Maybe we'd laugh about it over pancakes. The moment I stepped outside, I knew something was wrong. The ferns around the camera location were trampled. The mini tripod lay twisted on the ground. One leg broken, the GoPro ripped from its mount and missing. But that wasn't what froze me. In the exact center of the flattened grass sat a piece of brown paper, held down by a flat gray stone. My hand shook as I picked it up. The paper was rough, like a torn piece of a grocery bag, and on it someone had written in what looked like charcoal, "Don't film me." The letters were jagged, uneven, but the message was unmistakably clear. Julia came up behind me and read over my shoulder. She didn't scream. She just went completely white and whispered, "We're leaving, right now." I looked at the sky. It was already late morning. By the time we packed, the afternoon would be fading, and the hike out was almost 3 miles through dense undergrowth. The thought of being caught on that trail in the dark, with whoever this was, seemed worse than one more night. "We'll go at first light," I said. "We pack everything except the tent, and we sleep in shifts." She stared at me like I'd gone insane. But she knew as well as I did that the woods at night were a death trap of roots and drop-offs. That third night was the longest of my life. We sat inside the tent with the fly sheet zipped, a lantern casting jittery shadows. I held my knife. Julia gripped a bear spray canister. Around 11 p.m., we heard footsteps, not the soft steps of an animal, heavy bipedal crunches circling the clearing. They stopped. Then came the shh, slow, methodical, right along the side panel where my head would be. Julia whimpered. The sound moved to the front vestibule, then to the zipper. I watched in horror as the zipper pull began to rise, slowly, inch by inch from the outside. The sound of the teeth separating was deafening in the quiet. My headlamp beam hit the opening flap, and I saw a shape, tall, impossibly tall, a black silhouette against the deeper black. No face, just a smooth darkness that seemed to swallow the light. I remember 2 pale spots where eyes should have been, and a hand, long-fingered, curling around the tent's entrance. I didn't think. I threw the knife aside, grabbed Julia, and screamed, "Go!" We tore through the opposite vestibule, ripping the zipper, and spilled out onto the cold ground. I heard something move behind us. Fast, too fast. And then we were running. Branches whipped my face, my foot caught a root, and I went down hard, my left hand landing on a broken branch that sliced deep into my palm. The pain was white hot, but fear is a hell of a fuel. Julia pulled me up and we kept going. I didn't look back until we reached the car. My keys slipped in my bloody hand, and for one sickening moment the engine turned over and died. Then it caught. I floored it. Gravel spraying, headlights cutting a tunnel through the trees. Just before the road curved, I glanced in the rearview mirror. At the edge of the light, right where the forest closed in, stood a shape, tall, motionless, watching. Rangers searched the area the next day. They found our tent still standing, but no prints, no note, no camera. The torn paper had vanished. They filed a report, nodded sympathetically, and suggested maybe we'd spooked ourselves. "The mind plays tricks in the woods," one said. I didn't argue. I still had the photo on my phone, and every time I look at it, that high, deliberate handprint, the cold sweeps over me again. I sold all my gear. I moved to a ground floor apartment with street lights right outside. Julie and I couldn't make it work after that. We'd flinch whenever a curtain moved, and some things can't be unsaid. I sleep with a light on now, and the sound of fabric rustling still sends my heart racing. I don't know what it was. I don't know who or what stands over 6 feet tall in the middle of nowhere and leaves notes warning you not to film it. All I know is that somewhere in Olympic National Forest, there's a clearing where a camera was ripped from the earth and something very real, very aware, didn't want its face seen. I still have the photo, and I still wonder, if we'd stayed just a few seconds longer, what would I have seen when that zipper finally opened all the way?